Hi, this is Aaron Masliansky, the host of Inside the Skev. Before we start the show, I just want to let you know that the website Evanston.com has been completely revamped and is a great resource for the community. So if you want to find the latest episodes, blog posts by guests from the show, live events that are taking place for Inside the Skev, and also from other people who've been on the show, and to find out the latest real estate, because I am a realtor at Dreamtown Realty in Evanston, it's really the place to go. So you can follow it on social media at Inside the Skev on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I'll be updating it as time goes on, but you should follow it, sign up for the newsletter, and enjoy being a part of this great community. So stay tuned for the show. It's going to be a good one. Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Masliansky. Today we're here with Dino Robinson from the Shorefront Legacy Center, which is a history museum for African American history on the North Shore of Chicago, based in Evanston, and looking forward to our conversation. So, Dino, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, why did you start this organization, and when did you start it?
Okay, well, I guess there's like a long story and a short story. I'll try and keep this somewhere in the middle.
Okay. We've got time.
I've always had this love for history. Didn't know where I was going to go with it. Didn't know if I wanted to teach history. My degree in college was as a graphic designer, so I got into advertising for a while. I left advertising, started my own business as a graphic designer, and I wanted to do something for the community. This kind of came around when I met up with an editor of a newspaper called the Evanston Clarion. And he asked me to write, after talking for a while, he asked me if I would write an article about local black history.
Yeah.
And I kind of figured, well, that should have been done already. I'm sure there's lots of people writing about black history. I'm not a writer. I can't write. You didn't see my English grades. So, but he kept badgering me about it for weeks after that conversation. And he got me more and more curious, well, why is he asking this? And so I started asking questions around town. And I started visiting locations that I thought would have, archives and history and things you could open up a book and read about the black history on the North Shore.
Sure.
And found nothing.
Zero?
Zero. I mean, there was file folders in one entity that was labeled colored. Newspaper clipping files, and then the general narrative that blacks in the North Shore were just domestics and servants, and that's their story. And I kind of sat there and said, "This is not right."
No.
And so I went back to him actually and said, I would love to write an article, but actually it's got to be more than an article. This is 150 years is what I'm discovering, and you can't write 150 years of history in one column articles. He said, "Oh, that's no problem. You could have a column of your own." And so I started writing articles for his newspaper on a monthly basis. I'm like, how did I get into this?
Right. It's funny how life sometimes brings you into different types of opportunities, right?
It does. Yeah. And it did pique my curiosity. And I want to do something that we can share with the community other than the articles. So I started putting together small exhibits, and I used it more. My thought process was, hey, I have a graphic design business. I could design some exhibits and showcase what I do as a business, and it'll generate more money for my business.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed like the opposite happened. I did that, and it generated business for Shorefront to do, exhibit work for other museums, but it grew Shorefront faster. People were getting interested in this history and we have information. Oh, let's talk. I'll interview you. And, here's some items. And so little bit by little bit, I started building my own archive. And it was started on our dining room table.
Yeah.
My wife, newly married, and trying to keep a neat house, and here I'm coming along right now with folders and boxes of
turning your house into a storage unit.
Exactly. And she'll look at me kind of funny. She'll clean the house and put a sack of stuff on the dining room table. She kind of gives me that evil eye look, but smiles. And I kind of yes, exactly. Every married spouse understands that look.
Yes.
And so I put it on there and I smile sheeply, "Hi, honey, I promise I'll move this later." And of course, that later never happens. So So then she ends up like stacking up and moves it. That's like the subtle hint that do something with this.
Right.
So, and I started thinking about, I got to do something with this. This is my interest, but this is, far more powerful than a self-interest. The community needs to know about this.
Right, and it seems like because people really responded and started bringing you things, there's a very demonstrated need for it.
Correct, and and as that happened, this was, mind you, this was growing on our dining room table. We moved locations, and so we had our own building, and we had like a basement unit. We turned into an office space. So I moved all the Shorefront stuff down there. So my wife was extremely happy.
Sure, yes, I'm sure.
And from there, it started growing even more. And so I turned like the downtown area into like the small incubator space of the growth of Shorefront and Robinson Design. So
Yep.
it's a shared office, my own little personal collab space.
Yeah.
And my man cave / when I get in trouble, I go down there.
Yes.
But as Shorefront and our holdings grew and our exhibits grew, exhibits were really small things, something you could like lightly carry, one person can hang up really quick in any location, anywhere. You could put it on the easel, put it on the wall, a display case, didn't matter.
Well, it was smaller, not like what you recently did at City Hall.
Right. So smaller things. So I took, when they weren't circulating, I would hang them up in walls in the office.
Yeah.
And I bought a shelf, and I started, getting archival boxes and trying to organize basically just subject matters. Transportation, history, churches, clubs, businesses. And they were relatively small collections until one day we got two things that came in. One time I came home, and there were 4 boxes with a note said, Dino, we want a Shorefront to have this because we don't trust any other entity.
Why didn't they trust any other entity?
Well, their thought process, and I had a chance to talk with them later, the thought process was, here are some entities that have been around for decades and have always ignored the black community. Mm-hmm. And here you are trying your darndest to gather this, make sense of it, and share it with the community. We thought you were the right person to do this because you have the right care and the right knowledge to continue this work.
What a compliment.
Oh, it was. It was like, we had like a ad hoc group that was working on this. Actually, our original working name before we decided on the Shorefront was called Through the Eyes of Us. Huh. And I did that on purpose to say, what, we're not official. We're just kind of like stabbing in the dark, trying to figure things out. Yeah. But it's through our own dialogue. It's our rules that we're setting for this. We have structure with it, but museums and institutions have these set guidelines and policies, and many times they're limiting. So a thought process for a person wanting to start an archive is like, oh, well, I have to get incorporated first. Then I have to do this training first, and then I have to do this first. And I'm like, well, you know what? As you're doing all that, people are dying.
Yeah, and they're losing
all this history. Yeah. So guess what? You can do all that stuff, but guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and interview that person. I'm going to grab that photo album. I'm going to scan these documents and get them in now, and we can organize that later. And that's why we're going to hire interns to process the collection. So I was kind of like, sometimes we'll put the engine, the horse before the cart. Sometimes we'll put the cart before the horse. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, sometimes we have to go uphill, but hopefully we can go downhill a lot.
Make it a little bit easier
Make the
after
traffic
a while.
A little bit easier, like just kind of coast it.
Yeah.
So Shorefront kind of grew more. So our first little museum was in the lower level of my basement, in a finished basement. We had a little display case, had some items on display, history panels on the wall, and a shelf with archival boxes growing. And we started getting more and more organized as a ad hoc group from Through the Eyes of Us to the formation of what became Shorefront. Yeah. And we would have board meetings at our house, and, in our basement, which wasn't really a big space. So if you imagine, like, 12 to 15 people huddled around a small table.
Yeah.
And this is one of my wife's last requests as we were talking about, wow, we're outgrowing our space. We need to look for a new space. And there's this opportunity to move into the former Foster School and pay this rent. Mm-hmm. And I had some board members say, well, we don't have money. We don't have this. And, it's going to be complicated. There's a lot of responsibilities. Why not keeping it here? So my wife, who was not a board member, but she was active, there. But she was there, said, this stuff has to leave now. And my response was, what she just said. So we moved into our first space in 2004.
Okay. But the organization, when you started everything, was 1995?
1995 we started.
Okay.
And we were first used the word Shorefront in 1999, and we incorporated as a nonprofit in 2002.
Well, so 7 years of getting it all together.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, that's how it works, you know. Why did you decide on Shorefront?
I actually had a directive for the board, to rename the organization from our working ad hoc group to the Eyes of Us, which, it's long. Trying to put that on a business card and explain that to people. It's kind of tough, right?
Yeah.
So I just tasked the board that I want to rename the organization, and I want one word. That was my goal. Mm-hmm. And, people are coming back, well, we're going to we'll call it the African American Museum of the North Shore, and we're going to call it the African American, and blah, blah, just these long titles.
Yeah, it's hard to
And again,
remember.
I'm like, this will get broken down to an acronym that nobody remembers what the acronym stands for. And I want to get out of this loop of, because we have a focus on a specific thing, that you have to put that in the title of the name. Mm-hmm. We represent an area of study. And that was my next, part of guidance. And so then we started looking at shoreline, North Shore. I said, but I still want one word, and Shorefront. So I had two board members that threw out Shorefront. We played that around. I looked up on some, trademarks and see if anybody else is using it in the area, and they weren't.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Shorefront it is.
Made
there we
it
go.
easy.
And then after that, we had a mission. Now, our original mission, I have no idea what it said. I just borrowed somebody else's mission, took out their name, of another historical organization.
Sure.
And I'm like, that looks big and robust, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just use that and swap out their name for Shorefront's name, and that'll be the premise of what we do.
Yeah.
Now, what was it? To this day, I still have no idea what that whole thing was. And we had a board development day, and we were talking about that. We're sitting here talking about what we were doing, and our mission statement is not helping, because we didn't create it, we didn't think about it, we just threw something together. Especially to get our incorporation papers done, we had to have something to put together.
You needed a strategic plan.
Right. And so we went back to the board and did some fundraising and got a grant to do strategic planning. And we hired in some consultants. And we did a lot of pre-work before the consultants came on board. So apparently I had some skill sets I didn't know I had, about board organizations. And I have been involved in other boards before, so I've seen how boards operate. I've seen how nonprofits operate. I was with another board at the time when they incorporated as a nonprofit, so I knew what to do to incorporate as a nonprofit.
But you really discovered a lot of skills that you didn't realize you had.
Right. All this training that my parents were trying to grain into me is it came to fruition. Oh, that's why they had me do that.
Yeah.
That's why I have to know algebra. Okay, I get it now.
Exactly.
Never understood why I needed it in high school.
It's nice when you figure it out.
Right, exactly. So we had this consultant come in, and we did a lot of pre-work. So I, interviewed the board members, and one of our board meetings said, "Look, why don't you write down? We're going to take 10 minutes, think about Shorefront, and write down in 1 to 2 sentences what we do." And at the time, we had about 16 board members at the time, and they wrote it all down. And I gathered all that paper up, and I put it in a folder. Yeah. So when the consultant came and was starting to talk about, what is the thought process? I said, well, here's an exercise we did. These are all the, the thoughts of what we do. And he said, well, you guys are already 2 months ahead of schedule. But, we were doing all these exercises accumulate into a board retreat that we held at Northwest University's campus in the Ford building. And we designed this in a way to have the existing board members who are active participate, with 6 community members who were not part of the board who knew only a little bit about Shorefront, and then 6 additional people who never heard of or have no idea what we do, but want to be involved with a board development process.
Really? So it's just wanted to...
Yeah, I wanted to get a good mix of from people who have no idea what this is, because it can have a different perspective from there and say, well, if you really want to catch people's attention, you need to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you have board members talking about something, you're so ingrained into it already, you're blind to what you might be missing. So I want to get outside, assistance with that.
Sure, you need to kind of step back and zoom out.
Exactly. So this retreat was supposed to be a 2-day process. We did everything in 1 day. And even the consultant said, I have never experienced such organization in my life like this. You guys are on the ball and on the right track. And he brought in another consultant to observe because he was really enthralled about the whole concept of going back to our name.
Yeah.
Why one name? Why Shorefront? And I explained to him that what I already explained to this in this production. I wanted people to think outside the box. That this is a part of American history. And we're not a subset of the popular culture in America.
Yeah.
So we have a specific topic, and that's the Black experience.
Yeah.
And that's derived by our mission statement. And our mission statement is Shorefront collects, preserves, and educates people about Black history on Chicago's suburban North Shore. And that exercise that I talked about earlier, where all the board members wrote, that's a combination of all the alike ideas, what they all wrote. Mm-hmm. Everybody wrote something very similar to that. So we took all of that with part of our development, and I got a PhD candidate and a business person and myself, one Black, one mixed, one white, which is kind of funny to how we did that. And we basically did a Venn diagram of all the terms that were used most commonly. And then we argued ad nauseum of the use of the word African-American, Afro-American, and Black. Mm-hmm. And settled on Black, decided to use Black purposefully because we want to make sure we're not excluding groups of people.
Sure.
If we say African-American, then we're excluding Caribbean,
it's
African,
a good point.
you know. And then my thought process, too, is that I'm American.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a great tan.
Yes.
But, I can trace back my family lineage in the United States before in the 1700s.
Really?
Late 1700s. So for 10-plus generations, I've been in the United States.
A lot longer than I
So I think that makes me quite American.
Yeah, yeah.
And putting it, and I have a friend of mine now who was born in Africa. She's Dutch by heritage, but she was born in Africa. So coming here to the United States and became a U.S. citizen, she's actually African American.
Yeah,
if you talk
true.
about that whole concept of where you're born, what continent you're born from, that's where she was born. I was born here in the States, so that makes me American.
Exactly.
So, and I was explaining all this stuff to him, and his final word to me was, "Man, that's brilliant." So,
It makes a lot of sense.
I want people to think outside the box.
Yeah. And, thinking outside the box is, the whole concept. Why, you talk about how you want to have the information and everything in your organization. Why is it so important to have, your own archives and not have it be part of the Evanston History Museum or be at Northwestern or a place like that where they have the capabilities already?
Yeah, well, that's usually the common argument that we get all the time. So, well, these entities already exist. Why don't you just combine your history with theirs? And my argument back, my pushback has always been, well, if we're of interest, they would have done this a long time ago.
Right.
I mean, the Evanston History Center has been around for over 110 years, 120 years.
And there was, when you went to go write something, there was nothing.
There was really nothing there.
Yeah.
So, and then also thinking in terms of, when entities, institutions, and everybody goes through this, when they have budget issues and when they have to do some cuts, usually the first thing that gets cuts are minority group entities. So, yes, we can have an archive there. And let's say they have a professional that will curate that archive. Then after several years, that position's cut. And then you have this archive that's there that nobody knows anything about, has no historic context to it, and it gets lost in interpretation.
Right.
So in this case, with Shorefront's specific focus on what we do, there's always going to be someone there with some knowledge of what the content is in its context of its locations. I've been to other historical organizations where they have things in their archive that is mislabeled, taken out of context. One was labeled. There was a historic photograph I saw at one of the entities that the caption was a group of Black Afro-American women at a picnic. And I'm like, again, just generalizing because he had no idea what it was.
Right.
Now, I looked at the picture like, I recognize some of these people in here. That is the founder of this major organization, and this is their fundraising picnic. So they had to relabel that. And then another one was mislabeled, or the guy said, no, that's not that church. This is somebody else's church.
Because they didn't know the history.
Right. They didn't know the history. They didn't know the context. So our goal is to make sure that community-based archives, retains its own autonomy and controls its own message.
And you make it much more accessible.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're, to come to us even.
Yeah.
You can park your car and about 20 steps you're inside the facility.
Right, as opposed to having to go through, if you go to like Northwestern's campus and go through gates and
right,
parking.
Gates, parking. By the time you navigate all of that, and if you're trying to donate something, yes, they can come out to you, but still, it's a lot of arrangement. The community-based archives, they have a direct connect with the community, and so you develop these relationships where families are coming to Shorefront. We're invited to go to families' homes and literally just go through whatever we like to do, with respect of what we do, and we're very respectful on how we approach everything. But when you get that trust from the community, the door's flying wide open. Yeah. And you develop this long-term relationship where family members start looking at it like, oh, my aunt just passed away, and we're going through their stuff. Stay tuned. We're going to come over with some boxes of things. We just learned that she was involved in this organization, and we want to make sure that you have this stuff.
That's, it's so meaningful that people have that trust, like what we said before. And also, you work with other organizations to go through other archives. So, recently, you were working with the Smithsonian?
Yes, right? Yes. And this was a project that took about a year and a half to come to fruition. And it came through, there's an organization that Shorefront is involved in called the Black Metropolis Research Consortium, and they're based at University of Chicago. It's not a University of Chicago program. It's an independent program. And it's and we talk about partnerships, for example.
Right.
This is a situation where the University of Chicago understands that the importance of a community-based and independent running organization that have its own autonomy. So, yes, they agreed to house the BMRC there, the offices, and they pay for a staff person. But the board is made up of representatives from different institutions and organizations like Shorefront, that we set the policies, we write the bylaws. They provide funds. The university provides funds for staffing, but everything else is on us to look for grants, and we have our own separate nonprofit status. So there's that sense of autonomy there. So working with the BMRC, and I've been on that board now since 2010, there was an opportunity working with the director with the Smithsonian African American History Museum there, launching their program that's called Community Curation. And it's a program where they're sending out media trucks to offer free digitization services. They did their first official one in Denver in 2018. And their next stop was to be Chicago. And that's why we started that whole process and talking about it. And so the organizing committee through the BMRC ended up being Shorefront, DuSable, Chicago State, and Vivian Harsh.
And do you do a lot of work with those other organizations?
Yeah,
like
we do a lot
DuSable?
of collaboration. Yeah, we're in constant contact with each other, and we share ideas. And just yesterday, I was on the on the email stream about a historic person in Chicago that's about to lose their archive. And so I, called the BMRC, and I went to call Chicago State to say, hey, I knew you had conversations with this. Are you aware of this time frame? And they weren't aware of that time frame, and they've had conversations with this person before. So we help speed up that process to make sure that his history is not lost.
Right, that's the key.
So
it's great, though, that there are these archives, and you could, learn this history, because when it's gone, it's gone.
Right,
and,
right.
And you talk about before, earlier how people just thought, well, the Black history of the North Shore is everybody was housemaids or whatnot. But
right.
there's been some royalty in Evanston, right?
Yes. We had a princess. That's what we like to affectionately call her, Princess Buy-In. Her maiden name was Hadley, or Dorothy Hadley, graduated from Evanston Township in the early part of this 19th century. She went on to Howard University Graduated from there and worked in the admissions office there. In the admissions office, she registered in a PhD candidate, Malaku Bayan, who coming from another university to finish up his doctorate study to be a clinical physician. Mm-hmm. Turns out he's going to be the personal physician for Haile Selassie in Ethiopia. So at the time when they met at registration, there were fireworks, apparently. 3 months later, they were married. And actually, he was actually engaged to someone else in Ethiopia. He was like, "Oh, sorry, babe, I can't marry you."
It's like coming to America.
Exactly. It was literally a coming to America scene. It's like, I'm not marrying this person. I want to... I found my queen.
Exactly, yes. I love that movie.
So, with that marriage and his role with Haile Selassie, he was appointed as ambassador for community engagement across countries. So after they married, they first moved back to Ethiopia, lived in Addis Ababa, the capital, and she often interfaced with Haile Selassie and the Queen. And then she became a war correspondent with her husband and writing about the whole issue with the Italian government invading Ethiopia. And they set off to do fundraising around the world to garner the support of blacks around the world to support their battle against the Italian invasion. So they had offices in Harlem, New York, where they started a newspaper and the Ethiopian World Federation, and that World Federation still exists today. They at one point moved back to Evanston for a while, and their son went to foster school here in Evanston for a couple of years. Then they moved back to New York. They lived in England for a while. They were very active. Dr. Malaku Bayan passed away in the 50s due to illness, and Mrs. Bayan, or Princess Bayan, lived into, I think, early 1990s. Wow. And their son passed away in 2007.
Okay.
And about 2 years, when I finally got all the pieces together about her story, I found a location where I could reach out to her son, but I was 2 years too late. Fortunately, though, some of her papers exist at the Yale University archive. So she has some handwritten notes that she has sent back to her sister here in Evanston about her experiences meeting with the king and queen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and and that's just such a good reason why it's so important to have the history and to know about that, because, when you look at the history of segregation and redlining, it's a lot of wiping the history from a people away, and when you maintain it, you can't erase somebody's story. And recently you had an exhibit at City Hall in Evanston all about the redlining. Yes. And my background is in urban planning. I'm a real estate agent, so I've learned a lot about redlining. There's a lot of laws for fair housing to stop this from happening, but you still see the effects of what's happened over the course of history. And even if you look at the microcosm of the North Shore or of Evanston, and I think it's great to be able to have the public understand that story. I mean, when did you start thinking about doing that exhibit, and how did that come to be?
Well, there were actually an earlier version of that exhibit was with Open Communities. They changed their name. They used to be like the North Shore Equal Housing on the North Shore, and they were located in Highland Park. They moved their offices to Evanston and renamed their organization to Open Communities. So about 7 years ago, I put together this timeline exhibit of equal housing in the North Shore and encompassed, a much broader area. So what I did is I utilized part of that and added some new information to distill it down to just a focus on the Evanston. And I kind of made the panels complement the national exhibit on Design the Red Line. The city of Evanston asked Shorefront to produce that, and I just kind of studied a little bit more and got some information and wanted to make sure that people understood that we're not talking about something that happened elsewhere. We're also talking about what happened here in Evanston, and we fully participated in that. So I blew up the federal survey map that they used for the study. It was done in the 1940s. that shows the map of Evanston and how everything was zoned. And one area, the only area in Evanston that was zoned not to extend loans to, was now what we know as the Fifth Ward in Evanston. Mm-hmm. And that had a long-term effect, because once you do that, then loans won't go in there. So if a person were to start a business, no bank would loan to a business in that area. No developer would get loaned money to do any development in that area. Residents couldn't get loans from local banks to buy a house in that area. So when you have no financials going in and resources being pushed out of there because nobody's going to develop there, so resources can't stay there because they can't afford to stay there because there's no development, you get this blighted area that lasts for decades.
Right.
And it's hard to fix that overnight when you have policies that prevented that from happening, and then you have a mindset that help maintain that. So even today, if you Google, like, I'm moving to Evanston, where should I move to? Mm-hmm. Somebody threw up a map a while ago with a hand-drawn, boxed-out area. It's like, yes, this is a great place. Nice, nice, nice. And that one area that was zoned for no loans, a big X and a big no in the middle of that.
Right. It definitely pervades.
Yes.
And, and then when you see, like, payday loan stores and places like that, they're high-cost loans,
right.
And they exist in the Fifth Ward, and it pervades to this day, mm-hmm. where you're not able to get low interest. I mean, you can get a mortgage and everything now. The laws have changed that, but the mentality has stayed.
Right.
So how do you change that?
Well, that's why we have, supposedly governments for regulations to make sure things stay fair. I think, the nature of this country right now, a lot of people think that regulations is bad for business. Mm-hmm. But, what's worse for business is deregulated areas. And you have, especially, let's say, we'll use an example of like payday loans. Yeah. Then you have a field of business that has become high risk and lawless. Yeah, we'll lend out a loan to you at 51% interest. Who's going to stop them?
Right.
And who's to stop them how they collect it? Oh, guess what? It's due tomorrow.
And then everything that you own is gone.
Right. Or we own everything that we gave you, plus penalties that
right.
You'll never be able to dig yourself out of because those rates are too high.
Right.
And so you have this repetitive, like, predatory type mentality. And, The Atlantic a few years ago, Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote an article about, it was entitled Reparation, but the focus really was on predatory lending and housing and and that was part of the case of why he thinks reparations is needed, because of this history of predatory lending that destroyed black communities.
So the topic of reparations has come up in Evanston as well and recently discussed, and there's support for it. Mm-hmm. How would that actually work? What would reparations look like? Well,
that's what we're all still trying to figure out. What does that look like? And the alderman, and I really appreciate her approach. And what she's been really drilling into is that, once you started mentioning reparations, everybody's coming out with these negative things. Oh, how are we going to do that? It's going to be too expensive. They think money,
right,
first and forehand. It's more than that. So she has addressed these with, like, at least so far 2 community engagement processes that she said, I want solutions only. Anybody can rattle off negative anything,
sure.
ad nauseum. Come with solutions only. If you come with any negativity, we're not listening to that.
Right.
We want solutions. So part of the reparations, you do need some seed money to work with. And she's asking and requesting for $1 million a year for the next 10 years. So $10 million altogether, and that's derived from existing tax pools and some new ones that are going to be created in the city of Evanston. So the residents don't have to worry about, my taxes are going up to pay for reparations, and why does this group get the money and I don't? I'm a taxpayer. Well, look at history in Evanston.
Right.
Black residents have been taxpayers since day one, but we were banned from using public facilities, banned from parks, seating arrangements, predatory lending,
Right.
lack of resources, a
Or trying to
segregated
be
school.
starved out.
Right. So starved out and moved out.
Yeah.
Families were moved out of communities against their will. So policies that were put on them, whether they're in the books or just, in this instance, mob rule, were deprived the basic rights that everybody else gets with privilege gets to enjoy. That's what it's paying for.
Right.
So it's got to come somewhere.
What's the answer to the argument of, I didn't live in Evanston. I wasn't alive when that happened. I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's still benefiting from the privileges of those who benefited from their privilege. Mm-hmm. So you're living in a place where you can kind of freely do what you want. And people that look like me sometimes have to think about that before we do what we want, because it can mean our lives.
Yeah.
So that is a big picture to deal with. And what's really coming to fruition and a lot of pushback from minority group communities is really reframing American history. Yes, you could talk about all these glory days and all these heroes that we celebrate in the history books, but to another group of people, those same heroes you celebrate are enemies.
Like Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, Christopher Columbus. Yeah, he brought disease. Is that the dude that was lost and brought disease and raped and pillaged his whole community?
Right.
So, it depends on how you look at it. The expansion of the West, right? Or Native Americans' point of view is like the slaughter of our land and hostile take over our land. Mm-hmm. So it all depends on who's writing the history and who's benefiting from it and who's the victim of it.
It's true. It's all about the story. And, recently I read a book called How to Hide an Empire, all about America's empire, basically starting from the conquest of the West and to the Spanish-American War, World War II, how things have changed. And, America controlled the Philippines. Still Panama, or they had Panama, Puerto Rico. We
have bases all over the world.
All over the world. And
how many foreign bases are on American soil?
0.
Exactly.
But so our empire has changed in the fact that we have we don't have colonies per se, except Puerto Rico and some Solomon Islands and different places like that, but. People didn't even put it in their mind that this is America, or America is an empire, and it's the history, and the people who lived in those areas absolutely knew it. But there's a different set of laws and rights, and it's not just that it happened across the ocean in the Pacific. But definitely here in the United States, where there had been a separate set of laws and rules for different groups of people.
Right.
So, what do you think reparations will do to help, Evanston?
I think we'll put a sense of balance and opportunities for everyone. If Evanston's mission or vision is to be the most livable city, then you have to have equal access to all of those things. The mindset that a group of people who have been oppressed for so long can just suddenly pull themselves up by the bootstraps and get on even ground, that's fantasy thinking. Mm-hmm. If you and I are in a race on a track, and I got all the advantages, I have a clear path, but here I am, I'm like, okay, I don't want you to have the same opportunities. I'm going to put a hurdle there, a pitfall here, barbed wire over here, and I'm the one tossing that. How is that equal?
Good point.
And then we get to the finish line, I'll say, well, what took you so long? Why can you do better? Why didn't you bring your other friends along with you, to help you along? Well, this whole group of people that were just basically had obstacles put in their place, and now that we're at the finish line, you will say, oh, now we're equal.
Right.
No, there is a struggle that has not been equal.
And that's why it's so important that you're sharing the story in the archives that you have at Shorefront.
Mm-hmm. We want to, and people, the way Shorefront operates, just sort of as a general picture, we're a library with resources there that don't circulate outside the building. So researchers come and do things there for their reports, for self-interest, for developing an exhibit, for doing documentary movies. We want to make sure we have resources there for people to utilize to complete their work. And we think that's important. So with our small collection that's on my dining room table, we have over 275 linear feet of archival material, and we're still getting things all the time. I think we're in the stage now of getting a couple more big collections in the coming months from two long-established black organizations. One's a sorority, and one's a social civic group. And the chapters that are located here, we're getting their original incorporation papers, their early members, photographs, scrapbooks, other ephemera that relates to that organization.
So you're going to have even more to look at.
Oh, yes.
And go through.
More of the process. Yeah. And it's cool to do this because now, these people are active with it. So there's context. We can, if any interns out there interested in volunteering or working with Shorefront, it's an opportunity to not only process an archive, but also engage with the people who donated them.
And, some of the other things that you also have is you have a journal as well, right?
Yes, an online journal. And that's open for the community to submit articles to. Our original journal was a printed piece that we put out quarterly, and we only printed about 300 of those, budgetary reasons.
Sure.
And we did the cost analysis. We did a lot of volunteer work with that, donations. But when we costed everything out of how to do a quarterly journal, it was $5,000 an issue. And that's $20,000 a year.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we had to rethink how we did this, and we only were reaching out to 300 people.
Yeah.
So we transitioned the printed journal to an online journal, and we've been doing that since 2012. And now we have a monthly readership of over 750 visits.
Wow.
A month.
So
that's great.
That's
and then people
fantastic.
are going back to articles that we've written years ago and are still getting hits. Yeah. And sometimes they're reposted and reblogged on other blogs. We did one on Dorothy Bynum, as I mentioned earlier, married to the prince, where her article was picked up by Yale University as we were talking about the archives of Dorothy Hadley with the letters I told you about.
Yeah.
They picked, and they were kind of re-reporting on that, the findings and what they did with that, and they picked up our article along with that blog.
So it's just another way to really kind of leverage what you have and be able
Correct.
to get the word out throughout the world.
Our whole goal is to make Evanston's and the North Shore's Black history discoverable. So the big thing today is content.
Yeah.
So what's available online and how do people find it? So we tag a lot of stuff. We and try and make as much as we can available with the resources that we have. So they're always growing. And back to the Smithsonian, part of the the project with that, they came to Evanston to offer free digitization services for community members. But the longer-term project is partnering with Shorefront to get a lot of our moving media digitized, and they're going to do it for free.
Yeah, that's a great resource that you're able to utilize.
Yes.
Is part of the future ideas for Shorefront to be able to create more digital content, or do you have future visions for the space itself?
Yeah, we have some future. We would love to have our own freestanding street-level space, modern facility. It doesn't have to be large. I think right now we're in about 2,100 square feet center. I'd like to have maybe something double the size, something where we have room for, mixed-use meeting space or presentation space. So we do lectures, film screenings, have an engagement there, but also space for secure and climate-controlled archives, and a study room and offices.
Sure.
But, street level, modern looking. I like to have a water feature in there and a historic brick walk or sculpture piece. I like foliage and I like green energy. Mm-hmm. So if you'd envision that, and if you're an ambitious architect that would love to sketch out a concept, we have some locations that we have in mind that we've been engaged with the city of Evanston, and now having some interesting talks with some staff members at Evanston Township High School and other entities to say, look, the future of Shorefront is beyond our board. I want people to come back, 100 years from now and find Shorefront here.
Yeah.
And
be a beacon.
Yeah, and what does that look like? I want it to look like it's something that brings people to Evanston. I want to be in a position where, like, wow, Shorefront is so great that National Archives are coming over to us and say, hey, we want you to have this collection here because it's important.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a rich history, and I think that if you have a building and a space that reflects that, it will shine for generations to come.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think with the activity of our board members, who are just fantastic people, earlier in this conversation we talked about, the capacity for and the professionalism of institutions. And one of my pushbacks with that argument with community-based archives is that our board is made up of people and professionals that graduated from institutions. So we do have the knowledge base there. We're not just, that perception of, it's just this whole mom and pop thing of some elderly people reminiscing about the past.
No.
Our board is made up of, educators, archivists, graphic designers, photographers, videographers, musicians. So we come from a wide, broad range of expertise that we could bring to the table.
And you would consider the board a working board, right?
Oh, it's a working board. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We have 3 levels of boardsmanship. So we have a board of directors, which is the working board. They set the policies, manage the budget, volunteer where they need it. Then we have a board of advisors, and that's exactly what they do. They advise. We call them up and say, hey, we need advice. And they advise, and we hang up. But, they're engaged, too, so they're like the word of mouth around the community. So the board of advisors are made up of business people and people holding advanced degrees to offer the advice that we need.
Right.
Then we have our honorary board. And I call them the street cred crew. And it's what's needed because with community engagement, we are, the board and the executive director has to put on a professional front. Using the big fancy words and terminology and shirt and tie and presentations and stuff like that. So we're engaging people in that way. But the street cred crew can nudge their friend they're sitting next to and say, look, this place is legit. You need to donate their stuff. You and I go way back. So that interconnectivity of all of that in a word of mouth generates that type of partnership.
Yeah, and you have full community buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we always report back to the community. I think one of my most important presentations that I do is to the Foster Senior Club. They've been an active organization since the 1950s. In their membership, they meet every Wednesday. And there's no less than 70 people present for those meetings. So I go to them and do I call it the state of Shorefront. And I talk about what we do for the year, what we're working toward, where our challenges are. And I look around the audience to see who's nodding their head up and down or who's crossing their arms. And I always go up to the people who are crossing their arms and say, okay, what did we say that was wrong? What are we not doing? And, 9 times out of 10, we're doing it, but, they're just they have to say their piece. No, you should talk more about blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, ma'am, you're right. We should do more of that, even though we are.
Right.
But we just acknowledge that, yes, we'll do more toward that. And do you have any additional information you can provide for us? Do you have any photographs? Do you want to be interviewed? And so we engage them in that way.
You seem to have a real knack for really engaging the community and getting full buy-in. And, something that, I when I was looking at the exhibit about the redlining, you talk about in the future how the way to solve it is to have full community buy-in, where when there's a new project going on, you get the community's involvement. What do people really want? How is it going to benefit the full community? Mm-hmm. And it's just based on really what you're doing with Shorefront. I mean, and that's how there's so much support.
Yeah, people can get a historic content. So now we have, city government coming to Shorefront to look for new information. So when the argument for reparations came up, city government employees came over to Shorefront to do research. Mm-hmm. Say, where is the documentation? Because we don't have it in the law books. I'm like, yes, it's not going to be in the law books. But it was like, here's an archive of Evanston's first black alderman and his correspondences and what he did. So you can understand and put in context. Here are early newspapers that said the Jim Crowing of Evanston and how it's impacting the community. Here are the studies that talk about what to do with the black people in Evanston. How can we move them out? You don't need to have policy written into law when you have the general attitude of the community that wants to push a group of people out, whether it's legal or not. If it's illegal,
it's memorialized.
If it's illegal, how can somebody who's affected by that fight against that when nobody will take up on their behalf?
Right.
City government's not going to do it. Legal's not going to do it because they can choose not to.
Right. Well, that's why it's important to have the story and to have those archives. Now, if somebody wants to come and see Shorefront, where should they go and when are you open?
So we are located at 2214 Ridge Avenue. That's on the corner of Ridge and Noy Street in Evanston, Illinois. It's a lower level of an established church that's there, Sherman United Methodist Church, and they are really good partners with Shorefront. We're offering the space at a really good rate to house our archives there and run programming. We have normal business hours on Saturdays from 10 till 2, and sometimes a little bit later, depending on how I feel. I'm usually the one that's there. Weekdays, if you're a researcher, a serious researcher is working for a project, you can ask for an appointment during the weekday and make arrangements to come in there and do independent work.
Okay. And where can you be found online?
Online is shorefrontlegacy.org, and that will send you to our launch page. We kind of control about 6 different websites. And we recently redesigned our website so people understood that we control all 6 of these websites. One will take you to the Shorefront website, the general Shorefront website, the Shorefront Journal, a memorial page honoring Doria Johnson, who recently passed about a couple of years ago, who was our resident scholar. And so we memorialized all her work that she was working on that website. Wow. And we also have a website for work we did with a collaborative of people called Diversifying the Digital. And these are a group of independent archives all across the country banding together to talk about our needs and our challenges, sometimes combating against institutions and structural barriers that prevent community archives from advancing. So, I mean, there's a small pool of grants that are out there. So if you look at the granting world in general.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of grants offered for social services, education, and arts, fine arts. Archives are like in this middle gray area called humanities. And nobody knows how to place humanities. Like, where do they go? Well, it's just like roll a dice and put them over there in the corner and forget about them.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, even in how we write grants, we change how we wrote grants. A lot of entities write grants to fund a project within their institution. And we started doing the same thing, too. Once we had Shorefront established, like, hey, let's write a grant to do this journal. Let's write a grant to do this exhibit. And I had to step back and rethink this and say, wait a minute. Shorefront is the project.
Yes.
So let's write grants to support Shorefront so we can do these various things throughout the year. And that gave us better direction, a more clean and concise type grant application where we could frame everything consecutively, and we have that ability to change what we're doing midway if we find something's not working the way we want to. Because sometimes grants are so tied to a project, if you can't execute that project, you have to send the money back.
Oh, boy.
So, and on top of that, because it's such a small pool of grants, so you have small independent archives competing with the likes of Northwestern University or the Smithsonian even, or the Chicago History Museum, all writing for the same granting entity. Who do you think is going to get it most of the time?
Right. I mean,
so
they've got a lot of capacity to get that.
Exactly. So the Diversifying the Digital symposiums, this was a series of 4 symposiums, and one we held here in Evanston. Not only were they independent archivists, but we invited funders too. So they too can hear what it is that we're up against. And if they truly believe in innovative programming, they're not going to find it at institutions. They'll find it with independent archives. Right. So some institutions are starting, some granting foundations are starting to change some of their policies that make it more attractive and more real for independent archives to actually have the ability to apply for it and win those grants. One last quick story about grants.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we'll get a lot of people say, oh, you're a nonprofit. Why don't you just write a grant to fund it? It's like, if I had $1 for everybody that said that, we wouldn't have to raise any money. So here's a good example. The National Endowment for the Humanities. It's a national granting application. They had a funding pool of $18,000 to award to nonprofits to buy archival boxes, archival material to archive their stuff. The application process itself, they're asking for surveys, what have you done with your collection? Why is this collection important? Why do you need to archive it? Why do you need these boxes? This is for a $2,000 grant. So I submitted. We did not win that grant, but we were one of 265 applications.
For $2,000.
For a $2,000 grant of a funding pool of money of only $18,000. So only a handful of entities got that grant. And after that process, like, you know what, I could raise money locally and get $2,000 and buy the resources that we need to archive our boxes.
Right, rather than spend that time.
Exactly. And then accountability afterwards of reporting, all this administrative work that goes along with that grant writing. So that also got us thinking about setting up an endowment. Mm-hmm. So we established one a few months ago with the Evanston Community Foundation, where people can write checks to the Evanston Community Foundation and have it directed toward the Shorefront Legacy Center.
Really?
And what we want to use that money for, just the proceeds of that money, so it generates an interest, and we want to use the interest, and we raise enough money to do this, to hire a full-time executive director.
And when do you expect that to happen, where you're going to have somebody?
Oh, we hope we can start raising money. Well, we're raising money now, but we hope, my goal is to raise $2 million.
Okay.
That's ambitious.
Serious money.
That's serious money.
That's a little bit more than $2,000.
Right, exactly. But, we think in our head that can generate about, $30,000 of interest to utilize to hire someone, even if it's part-time for now. Yeah. And that's a serious step in sustainability. And having that over the years, and that just keeps accumulating more and more. We don't borrow against it. We just use part of the interest generated from it.
Well, that's how these institutions run.
Right. I mean, Northwestern
just
just finished doing their fundraiser a few years ago. They raised, over $3 billion?
It's amazing.
If I had 1% of that, I'd be fine.
Exactly, half of 1%.
Set for like a tenth of a percent. I'm perfect. Right. They can run us for the next 20 years.
That's a lot of money. Oh my God!
I had to bring out my calculator and say $1 billion and I carry a 1. Geez, that's still a huge lot of money.
Even a little bit of interest on that. Yeah, it's that's how they're successful. Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing. And you're also on social media, so if people want to see what's going on,
Facebook is the one to go to for social media. We post most of our stuff on there: daily activities, new intakes, programs, speaking engagements. We tend to post there first. Yeah. The website is pretty much static. Like, here's some basic information. You could download our finding aids. You can learn a little bit more about the organization itself. See a quick video of, hey, what is Shorefront? Got to work on a new film now. I have an idea for a new film. I want to engage more of the community members in this one. Yeah. And I kind of want it to be more fun and more engaging.
Well, also the video of you being on NBC is helpful as well. So.
And lately, I've been getting a lot of. These last 2 months have been extremely busy for us. It's unusual. Yeah. Usually it was quiet at this time for us. We're like hunkered down thinking about fundraising and our events. But now, every week I've had 1 or 2 interviews or presentations to do for the last 2 months.
Why do you think that is?
I think.
I saw you in the Evanston Roundtable.
Right. So I think our media people are starting to get us, and people are getting more inquisitive about what we're doing. How did the small organization get the Smithsonian here? Mm-hmm. So I think that had something to do with it. That we're in the roundtable a lot, or we appear in other newspapers or radio programs. Another marketer, capacity building thing that we did, I went to a symposium about it. And so happened the presenter used Shorefront as an example of good marketing. It's like Shorefront is a niche of a niche. And here they are with a very limited budget getting the maximum out of that. I mean, now there's no excuse for not knowing what Shorefront is. You're just not looking if that's the case.
Right. Well, you're definitely getting, the word out for sure.
Trying.
Yeah.
It's one word, Shorefront.
It's
so
easy.
people call us shoreline, storefront. We don't care. The check's clear. We're fine.
Exactly. Well, it's great sharing, the story of the organization, how you've it's so amazing how it all came from somebody asking you to write an article.
Yeah.
Saying, well, I'm not a writer. And you're a graphic designer, and you turn into, jack of all trades.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I'm still serving skills I didn't know I had.
That's
I do have a mission that I borrowed from somebody else, my own personal mission. I borrowed from Nike. Just do it. Mm-hmm. And that's always been my guiding, focus. Not wait for somebody else to do it. Just go ahead and do it.
Well, it's been successful for you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, Dino, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Again, thank you for coming on, and it's a real pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Hi, this is Aaron. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of Inside the Skev. If you want to find out more about the Skev in Skokie and Evanston, go to skevinston.com or follow us on social media at Inside the Skev. So when you go to the website, make sure to sign up for the newsletter so you always stay updated on what's going on in the area. And if you ever need help with real estate, I'm here to help you. There's information there on the website, or you can always email me at aaron@skevinston.com. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe.